Hey guys, what is up, and I welcome each and every one of you to a new League of Legends video. So it is already that time again to take a look at the changes coming to the next patch, patch 7.15. Now this patch is going to be a little bit different than the other patches and how we covered it in the video, because instead of having a bunch of just big changes, maybe like 10 or so, there's actually a whole bunch of very small changes coming to so many different champions. So with this video, we'll be taking a look at essentially all of the changes, because that's just how this patch was laid out. But regardless, if you guys end up enjoying this video and you want me to continue making these patch videos every 2 weeks, then simply hit that like button to let me know. But let us not waste any more time and get right into the changes for patch 7.15. So the first thing to talk about, and probably the biggest change coming to the next patch, is of course, without question, the Urgot rework. Now I'm sure you guys have seen the gameplay of this champion, whether it's on my channel or others' channel, and he's going to be essentially a top lane champion, and I'll give you guys a very quick rundown of my thoughts of him right now. He is essentially a tanky marksman type champion. He's going to be again in the top lane. You can definitely play him mid lane. You can probably even play him in the ADC role or even in the jungle. His passive is probably his best, I guess, ability in his kit, because it does an obscene amount of damage, and a lot of his abilities throughout his kit revolve around utilizing his passive. It scales well, it just works with the items that you get, and it honestly is pretty damn OP. His W is also quite essential for his kit and how it overall works, because not only does it synergize very well with your Q and E ability, which are just essentially abilities that set up the rest of your abilities, it just does a lot of damage, it works well with your passive, and it's just very useful because of the shield it provides as well. And his ultimate is also extremely strong, whether it's picking up very squishy targets that just barely got away from a distance, or even killing tanks, since it does kill anyone below 25% HP regardless of the resistances that they have, so executing a tank can be just as effective if not more. All in all, I honestly believe he is extremely strong. I feel like he will be a very good top laner when he finally does come out, but there's only going to be one way to find out, and that's just waiting for him to finally hit the live servers. But let us now talk about the buffs and nerfs coming to the several champions coming into the next patch, the first of which being Akali. Akali's W, Twilight Shroud, has had its cooldown reduced by 2 seconds. Now at first this doesn't really seem like the biggest of buffs, but when you really think about it, it's actually not too bad. I mean, her W is really important in her kit and how she overall works the battlefield, and how she even works the laning phase pre-6. So taking off 2 seconds on her W will just give her many more options and the ability to of course just use the W more frequently, which will just allow her to do a lot more things much more efficiently. Next up, we also have a nerf coming over to Cho'Gath, which I don't think is going to be anywhere near enough of a nerf to actually bring him down, but it's going to be a nerf to his E ability, where the base damage got reduced as you rank it up, and the percent damage that it does to champions has also been reduced by 1%. Again, his E ability is definitely pretty damn strong, and nerfing it is the right thing to do, but the biggest issue is the fact that you can just stack a bunch of HP, pop Gargoyle Stoneplate, and just ult someone for over 2000 true damage. I mean, that's going to be probably the biggest offender, and that's probably what Riot may want to look at next. Following this, we have what essentially is going to be a rework happening to Mundo, which I did cover before, but I'll go over once again very quickly. So his E ability, Masochism, has had a big change. Now the cost in this ability has actually been lowered from 25 health to nothing, but it has a new effect now where, as it states, passive. When Dr. Mundo suffers magic damage or pays a health cost, his magic resist is increased by 2% for 2 seconds, up to a maximum of 30% by rank 5. And you can see the active effect of Masochism has also been slightly reworked as well. Not the biggest of changes, but a slight difference as well. Now keep in mind that whenever he has his W on, he's consistently dealing magic damage to himself, which, if I'm correct, actually will continuously proc Masochism's passive effect, so he can essentially be walking around with a 30% magic resistance constantly. Personally, I think that's actually pretty damn strong, and he's going to be extremely effective against AP heavy type comps and champions, and I feel like Mundo may actually finally find his way back into the meta, but there's only going to be one way to find out, and that's just to wait for the live servers. Next up, we have a quick buff actually coming over to Ekko. Now his E ability, Phase Dive, has had its cooldown changed to be just simply lower at the earlier ranks, but by rank 5 it'll be the same, which is 7 seconds. This is actually quite good, because by rank 1 his E ability will actually have a 2-second lower cooldown, so being at 9 seconds rather than 11, and you always want to max your Q first followed by his E after. So for the most of laning phase, you're going to have a lower cooldown on his E ability, which will of course give you more potential to not only be just more mobile, whether it's to escape, but it'll also give you more opportunities to finally go in for trades and actual all-ins, which obviously is going to be very good, and this may actually be a pretty damn good thing for Ekko. Following this, we have a quick nerf happening to Elise, where her base AD has been lowered by about 3. Now again, not the biggest of changes, but this is going to be hitting her early jungle clear speed by just a tad, so something to keep in mind. There is also a quick buff happening to Ezreal, very similar to what just happened to Echo, where his Q ability's cooldown has been lowered as you have it at the earlier ranks, but it ends up going back to 4.5 seconds by rank 5 regardless. This one is not going to be as big of a buff as Echo's was, because you usually do want to max your Q ability first on Ezreal, so you're going to be pretty much at the exact same CDR by rank 5 pretty quickly, so this buff won't really feel too significant for a large majority of the game, but I guess in the first few levels in the laning phase, it'll definitely be a slight buff. Next up, we also have some buffs happening to Gangplank, where his passive, Trial by Fire, has had his bonus true damage changed from starting at 30 going up to 200 to starting at 45 and going up to 215, essentially a 15 damage buff. Now obviously this isn't really all that impactful. I mean, it's a buff regardless, and it will of course make him slightly stronger, and keep in mind that you are giving him 15 true damage rather than 15 physical or magical damage, which obviously makes it even better, but at the end of the day, not the biggest of changes in the entire world, just a very slight buff to Gangplank. Next up, we also have a nerf happening to Gragas, where his ultimate has had its cooldown changed to where it'll be higher at rank 1 and rank 2, but even out at rank 3. The point of this nerf is of course to impact Gragas' early game potential and just ganking potential in general, because it is really strong. He can do a lot of damage and is honestly quite obnoxious to face, so this will kind of slow him down a little bit in the earlier parts of the game, but by the time he gets to his rank 3 ultimate, he'll be the exact same as he is right now. Next up, we have a quick buff happening to Aurelia and her ultimate, where the cooldown on this ability has actually also been changed to a very similar fashion to what we've been seeing, where at the earlier ranks she'll have a slightly lower cooldown on her ultimate, which will then even out by rank 3, still being at 60 seconds. Of course, this is going to be aimed at trying to improve her overall early game and laning potential, so she'll be slightly stronger, since she of course will be able to use her ultimate slightly more often, but again, not the biggest thing in the entire world. Then we also have a buff happening to Jinx, an ADC that's been sort of finding her place once again in the meta, not really having a lot of success. And even though this buff won't just simply propel her back into the meta, it's a buff regardless. Now again, it's going to be to her W ability, where the cooldown has actually been lowered at every single rank by 2 seconds. Now here's a buff that actually may finally make some impact within League of Legends, and is going to be towards our newest champion, Kayn. His ultimate, Umbral Trespass, has had his AD ratio increased by 40%. Now of course 40% is actually quite a bit, and especially if you're playing blue Kayn and you stack just a lot of AD items and just get a lot of assassin type items, this is going to impact his ultimate quite a bit, because at the moment, and I actually pretty much felt this on the PBE server, his ultimate really didn't do a lot of damage, and even on the live service it also doesn't do a lot of damage. So hopefully this buff of 40% increased AD ratio will actually make it start being much more impactful and doesn't feel like you're just tickling the enemy. Next up, we have a very quick buff happening to Lissandra, where her base damage and her mana per level has been increased, though I doubt this will impact her too much. We have another buff happening to Lux, where the cooldown on her Q ability has actually been lowered, so it'll be slightly more effective at the earlier ranks of the ability, and her W now just simply works better if you hit an allied target with both parts of the shield when it goes out and when it comes back in, essentially rewarding you and the ally for being able to get hit by both parts, which at the moment feels a little bit difficult. But I would not be surprised to see Lux back into the meta after this. Following this, there's a buff happening to Nami, where her Q ability, Aqua Prison, has had its cooldown lowered by 2 seconds at every single rank, just giving her slightly more power throughout the whole game, especially in the laning phase. Now here's a slightly bigger change of this patch. It's going to be towards Nasus, where his E ability has had its armor reduction changed to actually reduce 5% less at every single rank. But his ultimate actually got buffed quite a bit, to where now, whenever you have your ultimate active, Siphoning Strike has a 50% reduced cooldown. This means that with maximum CDR, you can pretty much get his Q ability to about 1.5 or so seconds, which is pretty damn ridiculous, and I feel like that's actually pretty damn strong. So I'm very curious to see if this will bring Nasus back into the meta, because I have to say that is a pretty good buff. Next, there's the buff happening to Nautilus, where his Q ability will deal more damage at the earlier ranks, but the same by rank 5, and on top of this, his ultimate has now had its cooldown lowered at rank 1 and 2, but evening out at rank 3, again, also empowering Nautilus in the earlier parts of the game, since he's pretty weak at the moment. Now there is a new hotfix that actually was already put onto the live server at the very moment, patch 7.14, but I feel like most people missed it, so there you can see it right there on the right side of your screen. Following this, we're also getting some nerfs happening to Rek'Sai, where the burrowed attack damage on her Q ability has been lowered by 10%, which shouldn't be too bad for the champion, but it is going to be a nerf regardless. Now similar to our Nunu friend, Singed has also had a hotfix happen on the current patch of 7.14, where he also received some pretty significant nerfs, which you can see on the right side of your screen. Now next up we have some buffs happening to Shyvana, and they're actually pretty good. The first of which is her base armor has been increased, and her E ability has new AD scaling, where it scales off of 30% total attack damage. The dragon form damage also scales off of 30% total attack damage, and the scorched earth damage also now scales off of 10% total attack damage. But the dragon form damage has actually been changed to go up to only 160 rather than 200, which of course makes sense since now it kind of forces you to actually build actual damage items on Shyvana to deal as much damage, if not more, with her new E ability. Next up, there's a buff happening to Sivir, yet another ADC that hasn't really been seeing, exactly her best of days lately. The damage on her Q ability has been increased by 30 at every single rank. Now, this is actually not too bad of a buff, and I feel like this may bring Sivir back into the meta, and it'll definitely help out her laning phase, because don't forget it does come out and go back in, so that's double the damage. Now the Udyr rework that I've talked about twice now again got reverted onto the PvE server. Apparently they want to change even more of the champion before they finally stabilize it and make it the final iteration, so it seems like we'll have to revisit this rework once again in the next PvE update. Next up, we also have some buffs happening to Xerath, which I did talk about in an earlier video, where the slow on his W has actually been increased to 25% from 10%, and the damage on his ultimate has been increased with every single rank as you level it up, but rank 1 is the same. Personally, I feel like the increase in slow on his W is actually pretty damn good, because it'll help you set up the rest of your abilities perfectly, and it's going to be overall helping your team, of course, pick up the slowed targets even better. Following this, there seems to be a nerf happening to Zac, which is completely justified. His Q ability has had its cooldown increased by 1 second, and the cost has also been increased from 4% of the current health to 8%. And on top of this, the damage on his W has also been lowered by 15 at every single rank. Now this is not too bad of a nerf, and is definitely going into the right direction, but I still don't feel like this is going to be enough to bring Zac down to a level he should be at, and he's still going to be pretty damn strong. Following this, there's a pretty decent buff happening to Ziggs to his W ability, where the cooldown has been changed by only 2 seconds by rank 1, but a total of 4 seconds by rank 5. Now this is actually pretty good, because obviously his W, if you max at second, is his only ability that actually gives him any mobility. So having a 4-second reduction, especially with 40% CDR on his W ability, will be pretty damn effective, not only to of course displace enemy champions, but to help him get into the position that he wants to be, whether that's forward or to run away more often. Now next I want to talk about a nerf happening to an item, which is of course Duskblade of Drythar. It did get hotfixed to the current live server, but it's getting an even further nerf, where now it'll actually start at 65 damage rank 1, but only go up to 320 rather than 360 by rank 18. On top of this, it also has a new effect where ranged attacks actually deal even less damage, so only 45 to 300 bonus damage, and it does not provide the slow. I kind of wish it still went up to 360 damage, because I feel like it's honestly not that bad, but I guess this is going to be the way it's going to be. And the final thing is, of course, we have 4 fantastic new skins to the Omega Squad team for Twitch, Tristana, Veigar, and Fizz. But either way guys, that's going to be it for this video. There you have it, a whole bunch of different changes to so many different champions. Again, most of them of course being quite small, but since this patch consisted mainly of just a bunch of small changes, I thought, you know what, I might as well just go over every single one. So if you guys end up enjoying this video, then simply let me know by hitting that like button. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't, share this video with your friends so everyone else knows exactly what's coming to the next patch, especially the Urgot rework, and I'll see you guys for the next video. Peace.